Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the latest Ask Wrexham podcast. I'm Mark Griffiths from Wrexham AFC, and the hashtag Ask Wrexham, ASKWXM, is your best way to get in touch with us to ask questions. An idea that's taken off so well that we don't just use it on match days anymore to chat to us during the commentary. We also now produce this podcast, which we're using in order to answer the questions we don't get around to, and also, of course, to give maybe another go at answering some of the other questions. I'm buffering, sorry. Shouldn't do this post dinner. Um, uh, answer some of the questions that we maybe thought deserved a second airing. Unfortunate phrase after I just burped live on a podcast. But anyway, let's crack on. But before we do, because I never say let's crack on without then stopping myself, we'll do an extra Ask Wrexham podcast after the World Cup's finished. So any questions specifically about the World Cup, we'd be delighted to receive an answer. So please get those in. Use the hashtag Ask Wrexham on Twitter, ASKWXM. You know how it works. Right, first subject, new signing, Andy Cannon. Josh Lafferty asks, how big is the Andy Cannon signing? Jared says, how long do we have to wait till Cannon can join the active roster? Chris Mitchener, we just signed Andy Cannon. What position does he play? And is he as good as people say? And also Michelle Olsen asking, what are our thoughts on the new signing of Andy Cannon? Right, let's try and go through those questions. He'll be available for the Scunthorpe game. The only problem with Scunthorpe, I hope the pitch is okay. It's still cold here in Wrexham on Thursday night, but hopefully, and if it's possible, it'll get played. So he'll be available. He wasn't available last Saturday because we only signed him on the Friday morning, but he now will have had a chance to integrate into the squad, weather permitting. So he'll be available, definitely. How good is he? Well, on paper, he's a superb signing. I mean, he's a player who has come down from the Championship, so the second level. That's impressive. He hasn't played a lot of football there, but he's played a bit for Hull City. We're a big club. We're often in the Premier League. And he also came on loan to Stockport County. In fact, his first start of a loan last season for Stockport was the FA Trophy semi-final at the racecourse, which he was very impressive, and he really moved the ball around well. He looked in control in the middle of the pitch, and they took him off after an hour, and then we took control of the game and beat them. That was the game of Paul Mullins' two spectacular goals, of course. He's, on paper, an excellent signing. He looks like a good all-round midfielder who can do a lot of things. We already have a lot of quality in that part of the pitch, but I think it's good to have strength and depth, and especially with Jordan Davis getting injured, it just stretches us a tiny bit. And Parkinson has made sure that he reinforces with real quality now. Remember that issue last season, maybe, of the squad having a couple of injuries, and then maybe there were players on the bench who weren't going to really change things that much. Well, now he's got real squad depth. So Cannon is a very exciting signing, a quality player, central midfielder, but one who I think can do a sort of deeper role, passing the ball from deep, or play higher up the pitch and pass accurately and be a bit of a goal threat, both going into the box to try and get the end of things, or shooting from outside the box. So he looks like a very good signing. On paper, a fabulous signing, to be honest. Now then, next subject. Now I'm going to have to fob you off here. It's Ron Wilk asking, can you explain the significance of Wrexham becoming a city? What was it before, a town? And, well, I mean, yes, you're right. It was a town before. Now it's a city. Wrexham, I think it's symbolic more than anything else. We had an excellent response to this. I should have put it on the screen. Sorry. Talking about how being incorporated as a city in the States is a formal thing, which means you take control of your own emergency services, for example. Not here. It's much more of a symbolic thing. I think if you're crafty, you can use it as a good marketing tool to increase the image of the town. Although I have to emphasise, I've said this before, the massive thing which has changed the profile of Wrexham as a town or a city is Robin Ryan. We are now known around the world, but we are also in Britain. There's a buzz about us as well. People are aware of us much more than they were before, I would say. you might argue that's always been the case, that the football club's been the thing that puts Wrexham on the map when we've had giant killing results. We've had plenty of them. That is part of our heritage, really, part of our DNA. We're a team that turns up and gives big teams a bloody nose. That definitely has aided people knowing the club. When Wrexham beat Arsenal, I was a trainee teacher in Liverpool, and the kids wanted to know me the next Monday. I tell you that. Oh, they were so excited. Ironically, Arsenal played Liverpool the next Wednesday, and on the Cop were all singing Wrexham, and apparently they were selling Wrexham shirts to taunt the Arsenal fans with. All these little kids. I mean, I know they didn't mean it, they'd never follow through, but they were all, hey, sir, get us a West Ham ticket, for the next round. They reckoned, they'd all turn up and they'd all go to the game. And they wouldn't, but that level of excitement, Wrexham was a thing. Nobody was interested in me being a Wrexham fan before that, and once we beat Arsenal. So, yeah, it's football is something that raises the profile of the town. It doesn't mean that much, I don't think, in any serious sense. In all honesty, I mean, it always used to be the sort of in the gift of traditionally. No, let me go back a bit. Traditionally, it was a city, was a cathedral, a town I'll try it in English. A place with the cathedral, which was the centre of a Church of England diocese, so the regional headquarters, if you like, of the Church of England. That place would become automatically a city. That leads to some quite strange discrepancies. So, for example, there's a very small little place, about half an hour from Wrexham, St Asaph. Nice place. It's the seat of the diocese of Wrexham. So, ironically, not Wrexham, which has a massive parish church, but St Asaph became the city because that was the centre of the diocese. And there's a few other places dotted around Britain which are quite small, but have cathedrals of significance and therefore made cities. Now, it's in the gift of the monarch to sort of award more cities, and it's often a little bit of a beauty contest. We've applied a couple of times. It boiled down to us or Brighton. I think that was in the 90s. Brighton won. I mean, obviously Brighton won. I've got to say, Brighton on the south coast, an hour from London. Beautiful place. I mean, fantastic place, massive place with lots of variety and cultural variety. And you go there and you think, "Ooh, how did we think we'd beat them?" Then there was an announcement, I think, for the millennium, that a Welsh city would be given, Welsh town would be given city status. And again, it boiled down to us or Newport in South Wales, and Newport got the nod. I'm less at home with that decision, if I'm honest with you. Newport doesn't have a huge amount going for it, if I'm perfectly honest, to differentiate it from us. And we in the north of Wales always have a bit of a chip on our shoulder that South Wales tend to get all the benefits, and there you go, Newport became a city. So that didn't impress me much. I've got to be honest though and say that on both occasions, those campaigns did seem to get a fair bit of local support. When we campaigned to be a city this time, it didn't seem to get so much local support. And I don't know why, and I don't have strong feelings about it personally, either way, really. But it didn't seem to catch on. It became a bit of a political football, where some parties didn't support the idea. And we were also bidding at the same time to be a city of culture, which looked to have clear benefits. We didn't get to win the City of Culture, and it was all a bit of a surprise. The city announcement was supposed to be on a certain date, and about 3 weeks beforehand, suddenly, Wrexham's a city now. It was released, and nobody seems to know why. I don't know what to make of it. Certainly, like I said, there wasn't a sense of excitement about it. I think there would have been the previous two times when I think maybe people are a bit more enthused about the bid. Whether that's just a sort of FA Trophy final parallel where, if you have a couple of bad experiences, you don't want to invest into it, and so you don't commit to that bid. I don't know. But anyway, with a city, whatever that means. Chip was asking a similar thing, Chip Pate, but also threw in, and I just wanted to address this quickly. I hope long-time Wrexham Welsh supporters don't mind the announcing crew catching us up. And that is something that has exercised me a bit. I'm very conscious that a lot of the stuff we're doing at the moment, I see it, we're kind of, in many ways, first contact for new fans, and I want to be able to get the ideas and concepts of the club across. I've got to say though that personally, I haven't seen anybody being unhappy that we do this. I think lots of people just say to me when I ask them, "What do you think?" Should I not be going back to square one sometimes to explain things? I think a lot of people say they enjoy it. They seem to quite like hearing the stories. So I hope so. I've had no negative comments from it. I'd be very interested in, sort of long-standing Wrexham fans saying what they think. But I've got to be honest and say my personal experience is I'm now in touch with a lot more long-standing Wrexham fans. A lot of people will either communicate through Ask Wrexham or will come up to me at a match a lot more than used to. So I think it's a good thing all round for everybody, I suggest. I'd also, I mean, in the old corny thing, if somebody, fair enough, a fan who's been following for a long time knows the stories, doesn't want to hear them again, don't listen to it, which is fair enough. I don't mean that. That sounded passive aggressive, didn't mean it like that. You don't have to consume everything the club puts out. You should though, shouldn't you really? Yeah, too right. Don't remember, subscribe and review and like and all that stuff as well. Yeah. Drive us up the charts. Danny Bronson says, can I explain the club crest? He did a quick Google and it has a tie to the Prince of Wales. I'm curious about it now, the royal visit just happening. Well, yeah. Now then, in 1973, it was thought that it was the centenary of the club. And so they said they wanted to launch a competition to design a new badge for the club. And what they came up with has morphed into the current badge. I'll explain how it's changed slightly in a moment. So the idea is the feathers on the top are the Prince of Wales's feathers. That's the Prince of Wales's crest. It's got 3 ostrich feathers and Ich dien underneath, which is German for I serve. Now, politics, and if you're thinking about the royal visit, I'll talk about that in a moment, but I guess this will be the starting point of it. Obviously, politically, there will be some people in Wrexham who will not be that bothered about where the royal family comes from and see themselves as British and see themselves as monarchist. There'll be some people in Britain who in Wrexham who don't see it that way. Some people who might see themselves as Welsh more than British. This is just it's a personal choice, isn't it, to be honest? If you are considering yourself to be Welsh, you might feel, looking back at history, that Prince of Wales was a title which was imposed on the Welsh to keep an eye on the Welsh, if you will. Or you may see it that way, acknowledge that is the case, but also think, yeah, but that was quite a few hundred years ago, and is that still the case now? The fact that it's got a German motto doesn't look great, does it really? And in fact, the royal family's roots are in Germany. Maybe also, that does lean into that last sort of narrative. So the idea of the badge was it's got the Prince of Wales crest on the top because we are in Wales. I would have to say I would have been a toddler at the time. I don't know if there was any controversy about having the Prince of Wales feathers on it. I do know that people do talk about not having the Prince of Wales feathers on our badge now, but I don't recall that being a big deal for most of the time I followed Wrexham. Apparently the green represents the fields around Wrexham. I don't know quite how sort of obvious that is. And then underneath, hey, it's 2 Welsh dragons holding a football. I think that's probably self-explanatory. Now, before that, Wrexham, as I understand it, didn't have a badge at all until the 1960s. And when they did, if you've got the video version of this, until 1973, they had this little beauty, which is the badge of Wrexham Borough, the actual area of Wrexham. So we just had the town's crest on our shirts. Again, Welsh dragon on the top. The 2 crooks, the crow's ears, apparently one of them represents the again church. Valley Crucis Abbey is an ancient ruined abbey in Llangollen, and we were part of its diocese in some sense. I don't know, and that apparently one represents that, and the other one apparently represents the grazing land around Wrexham. Wrexham in a rural area. Wrexham essentially a market town at first, where farmers would come and trade. There's an area of town called the Beast Market, and when I was a kid, I remember there was a really big building where Mecca Bingo is now, which was the animal auction house. And my dad took me there once when I was a little kid, and it was exactly as the cliche would suggest, a little ring in the middle with metal fences around it, and then animals would be brought in, and there'd be an auctioneer going, and then mysteriously people would rub their noses or touch their hat, and then he'd take a bid from then, and it was all bewildering and remarkable and rather good fun. So that's supposed to be apparently representing the arable land around. So that was the badge, but it was the town badge. There have been other iterations. For our 150th anniversary in 2014, we had a special kit which was red and white, black hoops and horizontal stripes, if you will. And we had a special sort of badge commissioned, which essentially is the same badge but with the gold on it and with 150 years plonked at the bottom of it. Now the thing is, I said I refer back to why it was 1973, and if you do your maths, 1973 plus 50 does not equal 2014, and it's because there was further research that found that the club was founded in 1864. So until that was found, the badge was the same as it is now, but with 1873 on it. Something which still sort of irks us in a way, because you go and look on the internet and you'll find loads of the old badge, and lots of organisations or football clubs, when they print programmes or do social media and they're playing against us, might use the old badge, which sort of winds people up a little bit. I can see both sides of it. Our badge is not a badge with 1873 on it, so you are incorrect if you don't use that. But on the other hand, you know, if I was to copy Scunthorpe's badge, would I be looking that closely to make sure all the writing's exactly spot on? I don't know. So I'm not sure we should get too het up about it. But yeah, there's a potted history of the badge anyway. Pamela RWK next says, how do Wrexham local folk feel about Charles and Camilla showing up at the racecourse? This American doesn't understand the monarchy. Why does Cymru welcome them? Well, yeah, probably if you use Cymru rather than Wales, probably that section of society wouldn't be so impressed. I've got to say, though, in a way that the status of the royal family fascinates and bewilders me. It does divide people. It does go up and down quite a lot. After the death of Princess Diana, I genuinely felt there could have been a revolt against the royal family. I think a lot of people feel that. Anger really started to build up. And you may have, if you've seen the film, is it called The Queen? Is it under Helen Mirren as the Queen? And the Welsh actor Michael Sheen, who's been motivating the Wales team for the World Cup as Tony Blair, the Prime Minister. What happens in that film is seen as broadly right. That Blair, as a new Prime Minister, has to summon up his courage and intervene and tell the Queen, you've got to start looking compassionate about this because people are getting angry. Because at first there were things like the royal family refused to fly the Union Jack at Buckingham Palace at half-mast. So at that point, you felt you could have been on the verge of people saying, we're not sure we want a royal family anymore. Last few years, things seem to be a lot more popular. And it's quite interesting over here seeing the reaction to the Harry and Meghan Netflix show, and how some parts of the media are really rallying to attack them. Whereas others are putting it more just as reporting it and seeing it as an embarrassment for the royal family. But their support seems pretty solid, and there's plenty of, I mean, I suppose this is life, isn't it? There's plenty of people who are very motivated by issues. There's lots of apolitical people out there who just want to get on with their lives. And those people generally accept the status quo and are quite happy about a royal family. I think if you polled in Britain now, there wouldn't be any appetite to not have a royal family. And if you polled in Wrexham, I bet more people would say, yeah, we're all right with them than you might expect. I suspect that anyway, without any stats to back me up. So Yeah, some people didn't like it. Some people liked it a lot. Ultimately, I think it would be, for my view on this, and I've got to say, not everyone agrees with me. And when I've said this, people have said, no, I'm wrong. So I'm willing, and maybe I'll be wrong. I can't help feeling that it would really be quite a sort of political statement if we turned down a visit, perhaps. And it clearly benefits the club in the sense of giving us more global profile to have Rob Ryan, the King, the Queen consort there. So from that respect, I would say a bit of a no-brainer. You don't tend to get politically aligned clubs in Britain much, really. So I don't know if you could really justify saying no if you were asked, can the King come and have a nose around the changing rooms? That came out wrong. Will Sudworth also said, how did the royal visit alter Wrexham's travel and prep? Because remember, we went to Eastleigh. We were playing at Eastleigh the next day. And was I there for the visit? No, because I don't feel that I should overshadow the King. Fair play. Got to give the lad a chance. Don't think it affected things at all. I think the normal routine I'd have thought would have been for Eastleigh to go down on a coach on Friday afternoon. So I don't think that would have affected things much. They may have had a training session on Friday morning, but probably a fairly light session the day before a game. So I don't think it would have affected things. And let's be honest, the performance at Eastleigh was certainly by royal appointment. Okay, next up, Jared Phelan. What's the latest update about Lainton? I miss seeing him between the sticks. Well, he's fit now. He's been on the bench. He's fit. And, it may well be that the Scunthorpe FA Trophy tie is a chance to give a couple of people a bit of time on the pitch, and it may well be that he plays. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, for that. But yeah, he's fit now. It's just that, because he had a long-term injury, we needed to bring in a first-choice goalkeeper. We brought in Howard. Howard's not done anything wrong, and the nature of goalkeeping is, if you're doing fine, generally you're allowed to stay and keep your place. So Lainton will have to wait for his opportunity, possibly, but he may be given a chance to impress against Scunthorpe. Sometimes teams will have a league goalkeeper and a cup goalkeeper. Now, Howard's been playing in the FA Cup, but if we have a trophy run, it might well be that in order to keep his hand in, Lainton will be chosen as our goalkeeper for that, and then he's match fit and ready should he be needed. So he's fit, he's ready to go. It's just that if you're a goalkeeper, you can't. There's only one other person you can replace. It's not like other players you can slot in other parts of the pitch. Now this was interesting. Oh, splash water in my face. One season with Wrexham AFC says, sorry, I'm wondering if you're watching. I have to wander off camera to see this properly now. Contrary to the assertions of the Goon Squad, I'm not quite sure what that was referring to. Our issue is that good as he is, like Ronaldo, he makes our team worse. Some stats for you. When Lee has started the game, Palmer has scored 2 goals. When Lee has been a sub, Palmer has scored 9. Lee has scored 5 in total. Some more stats. When Lee has started, we've taken less points overall than we have in those games where he was a sub. We've also scored less goals and conceded more when he started. These are the fine margins, but perhaps the difference between first and second. Bearing in mind these stats, this will be interested on our take on what the figures tell us. Our perception is very much of Palmer's peripheral when Lee starts, and overall we're the worse for it. Right now, this is the way I look at it. Lee is an extremely high quality player, but we struggle to find the right way to use him at first, or how to integrate him into the team. We tried changing our shape subtly, and it just knocked the team off kilter a little bit, and he was a player of moments who was having good moments, but then was sometimes out of the game and not really affecting it. For me, the turning point, and I think the turning point that will secure the title for us, was at Boreham Wood. I think there was a doubt beforehand whether Lee could really play that central midfield role that Davis plays and do the work off the ball when we haven't got the ball that we need. We know he's great when we got the ball, but will he come back? Will he cover? Will he make tackles? Will he work like that? Or is he more of a luxury player? Well, we tried him in that position at Boreham Wood, and he was outstanding. And the fact of the matter is, he will do all those dirty parts of the job. He will work hard off the ball. He does go into tackles. Sometimes maybe dives in a bit too much, trying to show his willingness. as he showed the Blythe replay when he gave it. Was it Blythe replay? He gave away the free kick they scored from. Yes, it was, wasn't it? So, but he is looking to show that willing. Now, I would argue, let's take the stats from there. I haven't compared with the stats before, but for me, to my eye, the home forms continue to be perfect, obviously, and the away forms had some good performances in it. There have been a couple of less good performances, Wealdstone and York, but in both those games, unlike previous away games where we didn't have complete control, I thought we did have complete control. The York goal was a deflection. Wealdstone were never going to score if they played for 6 days. So although we didn't create well, we were still in control of the games in terms of we didn't look like we were going to lose at all. Whereas previously we looked like we could lose games. I have lost 2 away games. And from that point when Lee played at Boreham Wood, he started 10 games. We've won 7 and drawn 3. And I reckon that's a good return. As for Palmer, right, now, and I accept those are stats, and I can't argue against them. I would argue if you're really going to do number crunching, though, we need a bigger set of figures, to make it realistic, a bigger data set. But what I would say, and I know I'm going from statistical to subjective here, Palmer hasn't played badly in these games. He was terrific in, which match was it? I can't remember. Yeah, there was a game where he was outstanding and a few others where he's played well in the recent matches with Lee in there. And I would also argue, just by eye, that players like Lee, Palmer, Mullen, Ford really enjoy combining with each other. McFadden, they really enjoy combining, and Palmer enjoys having a player who spots his runs and a player who makes runs that he can spot. So I think those are really interesting stats, but I think maybe the real discrepancy is how we were doing before we settled on what we have now got, which I think is a title-winning setup, which is with Tunnicliffe in on the left side of the fence, which gives more stability. You all know I'm not criticising Cleworth, but Tunnicliffe is an exceptionally high-quality finished product who doesn't venture forwards as much, and Cleworth's only doing what he was told to do. No criticism. I think he's an outstanding prospect. You know that. I say this every week. But Tunnicliffe has given us a lot of solidity there. That's allowed us to have Lee in front of him, who has flair and might get caught at the pitch, but actually, to be fair, he does put a good shift in. That balance is what's going to win us the league, I think. So, interesting stat, interesting take, but I reckon if you take it from that Boreham Wood game, it works out differently, and that's the point where we worked out how to use Lee correctly. That's my theory anyway. Hope I'm right. Topher said, well, basically it was saying it went for a shower at 4, it came back and it was dark. Does it get dark in Britain at 4 p.m? In the winter? Yes. We have the whole daylight savings time thing, and every year we have the same boring debates about whether we should change it or not, and we never do. But because we move the clocks in the winter, it gets pretty dark by mid-afternoon. And yeah, can be around this time of the year very dark by around 4 o'clock. So yes, it is a bit strange. I believe it's to help farmers because they get an extra hour of daylight in the morning. A lot of people say, but it's less safe for children leaving school in the afternoons. But it doesn't seem to be any real sign of changing it. So yeah, but in the winter it does get dark quite early. So we're fairly northern, aren't we? Really. So that whole, northern hemisphere, slanty bit of the earth going upwards. I'm not a geography teacher. Don't ask me to explain it. Drew Godley, quite rightly, takes me to task. I thought Luke Young was suspended with 5 yellow cards last Saturday. I started that. I did hear other people saying it before I started it. Oh, I didn't start it, did I? Good, cool. I'm off the hook. Drew, I made a mistake. And that mistake, quite simply, is I forgot that the FA Cup has a separate discipline system. It didn't used to, but it does now. And I totally forgot. So yellow cards in the FA Cup, and one of Young's yellows was in the FA Cup, only count towards the FA Cup. So he is on 4 yellows in the league. If he gets one more, he will be suspended for the next league match. For one game. If you accumulate a number of cards, when you get to 5, it's a 1-game suspension. If you get sent off, by the way, for 2 yellow cards in a game, that's a 1-game suspension. If you're sent off though for violent conduct, so a straight red card, it's a 3-game suspension, unless it's a professional foul. So you stop the goal scoring opportunity, because that isn't violent conduct, but it is a straight red, so you only get the 1-game ban, if that makes sense. There's other complicated stuff, and that just makes it even more complicated. Now, John O'Devitt. Now then, John, I love this. And I've been mulling over it for about a week. Do any players have a perfect record for their position? So basically, a striker who played one, scored one, etc. I can think of emergency keeper Callum Preston. That's a great call. Keeping a clean sheet in his one appearance in a 0-0 against Hartlepool in a typhoon. That's all I've got. Well, I can throw a goalkeeper in from memory, which would be Clayton Ince, the Trinidadian international that we brought in on trial, but we couldn't get him a work permit, so we couldn't play him in matches. Eventually the move fell through because we didn't get him a work permit, but he did play one first-team game because we were in the Welsh Premier Cup at the time, a strange affair, and I don't exactly know why, but for some reason it was judged as... Okay, in terms of the club, it's a first-team match. But for some reason, in terms of the criteria that the Home Office were applying to people getting work permits, it wasn't. So we played him in one game, and he kept a clean sheet. So there's another goalkeeper. But in terms of players scoring goals and being perfect, I give you my list of players who only ever played one game for Wrexham, but scored in it. Now, there's actually then two... Oh, and, okay, warning here. Before 1921, we're in the Football League, records start to get a little less clearer. You know, there are some games with gaps in them. So there may be mistakes in our old history. But I think it's good to present it in terms of what we do know. So we had a player called John Hughes, who in the season before we joined the Football League, played one game, scored 2 goals, never played for us again. And also a player who's only recorded as McDermott. We don't know his first name. It's weird looking at these old match reports, which don't mention players' first names, just their last. And in the 1880s, he did the same. Played one game, scored 2 goals. Now, the rest of the list are all fairly ancient, except there's one that I remember, and that is Tom Craddock, who came to us on loan in the 2006-07 season from Middlesbrough. Played really well. He was a striker. Scored, what I'm pretty sure was the only goal of the game to win a match, but got injured and couldn't play again. So, yeah, Craddock's the one within living memory in terms of one game, 1 goal. Of course, the Welsh international Joe Allen came close to that because he played 1 game and scored and was absolutely outstanding. This is when Dean Saunders was manager at 2008-09. And... oh, you just thought, with this lad, we're going to be promoted. This is our first season in the National League. We're going straight back up because he was clearly head and shoulders above the rest. And like I said, he's gone on to become a mainstay of the most sustained successful Welsh team of all time. But in his second game at Mansfield, a tough game, we were winning at half-time. And again, he was head and shoulders above everybody else. But he picked up a knock, went off at half-time. And it turned out it was more serious than we thought. And we had to terminate the loan and send him back to Swansea. We still won the game. But we had to, no, say, the loan was terminated. He never played for us again. So 1.5 games, 1 goal, and head and shoulders above everybody else in the league in those 1.5 games. That's a pretty good Wrexham career as well, I'd argue. And what a shame that we didn't get the full benefit of Joe Allen, because I think a full season of him, I think we've not been in a National League for just 1 game. 1 season, rather. Mind you, all these what-if moments, if we'd gone back up, would Rob and Ryan, when they started looking for a club, have even looked at us if we were achieving what we ought to be achieving? I reckon maybe not. Maybe Joe Allen's injury led to Rob and Ryan coming here. That's a bit of a leap, isn't it? Right. Now, Jim says, how often over the next 3 months will games get postponed for a frozen pitch on average? Yeah, on average is the fair point, because you never know. I mean, when the weather is incredibly variable in Britain, I was told, I don't know if it's true, I don't believe weather forecasts, but I was told they're expecting a warm spell next week. This cold snap It's probably about as cold as it gets, I would say, to be honest. It's -7, -8-ish people are talking about in some parts around Wrexham. Um, so I would say on average 2, 3, 4 games a winter. But if you get a really bad one, you could have a run of games being called off. And if you have a mild one, you could have barely anything being called off. Sometimes you get clubs who don't look after their pitch very well. Braintree was a classic example. The moment was a drop of rain, they called the game off. They're not in our league at the moment, they're in the league below. And actually, they got, I must be honest, I didn't like this. They got like £250,000 grant from the FA to totally redo their pitch. And I couldn't help thinking, I mean, okay, you want to help them out, but that's £250,000 that they can now spend on players, isn't it? No, that's me being bad-minded. But yeah, it can vary. But yeah, it can easily 2, 3, 4 times a season. Maybe two's a bit of an underestimate. But again, in a mild winter, you can go all the way through without having a game off or hardly any games off. Snow could be an issue as well. Frost is the really bad one, though. You can't do anything about the frost, really. I mean, we got all the covers on. We had them on for days before last Tuesday. Didn't help. So, yeah, that's life, I guess. I can never. I always get. There's a tongue twister always. Beer, bear, beer. Why isn't it 3 up, 3 down for promotion and relegation? Topher chips in as well for this. Well, this is football politics. The traditional setup was top division, second division, third division, fourth division. They were all in the Football League. The Premier League broke away, but essentially it kind of stayed the same. This pyramid structure. And that was that. That was professional football. That's why the level we're at, the level below, it's called non-league. Because for most of football history, league was the thing to be in, the Football League. Generally, between those divisions, in my lifetime, it tends to be either 3 up, 3 down, or 4 up, 4 down amongst the Football League teams. Not always. In fact, one of the reasons why Wrexham has only been in the second level once is because for a good chunk of time in the Football League, only the top team went up from the third division to the second. And Wrexham would challenge for the title, but if you didn't win the title, there were no playoffs. You just didn't go up. Now, the thing is that teams could drop out of the Football League into non-league, but they had to be voted out by the other teams in the Football League. So at the end of every season, the bottom 4 teams in Division 4 would have to apply for re-election. And all the teams in the Football League, which then would be everyone from Liverpool, Man United, down to the bottom of the 4th division, would all vote. And they'd almost always, keep their mates in. You know, why would you vote to remove your friends when there's no need to? So almost always those clubs survived. Wrexham finished bottom once under that system in 1966, and there's no real huge danger we get kicked out. Promotion relegation was introduced in the late 80s, but only 1 up, 1 down. That was then expanded to 2 up, 2 down, so a title winner and a playoff winner. The trouble is, of course, that it's the Football League clubs that will vote for this. And quite honestly, the simple reason why there's not 3 up, 3 down, which would be much fairer and would be much less of a bottleneck, because quite consistently, I would say now, the top end of the National League is better than the bottom end of League 2, because you don't get to flush all the bad teams out, and you don't get all the good teams to go up. It's because the Football League, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. All the big clubs aren't going to vote to condemn small clubs to relegation, and all the smaller clubs are thinking, if you have an extra relegation spot, we could be going down next season. So they just don't tend to vote. So the Premier League's teams don't vote on this anymore. It's now 72 clubs. Championship, League 1, League 2, the second, third and fourth tiers. So yeah, basically, we'll only get equitable promotion relegation if the Football League clubs vote for it themselves. And that's perhaps self-interest suggests you shouldn't vote for it. There's a lot of talk about reform and an independent football regulator, and I actually had a question on the Price of Football podcast with Kieran Quinn, who's an excellent sort of resource, that podcast, he talks about the finances of the game and the politics and administration of the game, as to whether an independent soccer regulator might be able to have the powers to step in and say, clearly, non-league football is no longer non-league football. It's of a similar standard. Most teams in Wrexham's league now are professional. That wasn't the case at this level in the 80s or 90s for a lot of the time. And, would an independent regulator be able to say, this is wrong, I'm changing the system? And Kieran's answer was no. That wouldn't be a power that's granted. The Football League has that power within its gift. So I personally would argue that if we were in the Football League, I'd vote for 3 up, 3 down. Because it increases the chance of getting back up again. And I think that would make things healthy. So I think it'd actually be healthier for the Football League if some teams suffer, go down, rebuild and come back up again. A lot of teams have come up out of the National League and gone up the divisions. Look at Luton Town, for example. However, I can see why that idea would be a minority idea, to be fair. So Darren's happy place. It looks like both Notts County and Wrexham are on pace for 100 plus points this season, which is unprecedented. Granted, both are quality, but this also says something about the rest of the teams. Do you feel there's less league parity this year? I don't know, actually. No, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, some teams down near the bottom of the table have put good scraps up. I feel the quality going down the table is decent. I mean, Dorking look like a half-decent side, but, maybe reality's caught up with them a bit, and they're quite low down now. Some teams who've been quite low down have given us some pretty tough games. But I would ask, underneath Wrexham, Chesterfield, Notts County, is the quality of those playoffy sort of sides as good as usual? I'm not so sure it is. That would be my take on it. But let's be honest, I'm only getting to see one team a week playing against us, so I don't maybe see the vagaries of their form. But I think the bottom end's not too bad, but that maybe the middle is not quite as threatening as it has been in the past. Roy Cuffin. Now, oh yes, so some important shout-outs here. Roy basically says, can we give a huge shout-out and thank you to Alan Jones and all the Wrexham fans who donated to the Babs Mill tragedy. GoFundMe. Absolutely, Roy. It's our pleasure to do that. And yeah, it's always good to see that we've got a community that will rally round when support is needed. Also, Topher, I love this, said, I'll be driving my wife to her sister's house during a match next Saturday against Scunthorpe. Could you please give a shout out of love and thanks to Misty from Topher for her allowing me to listen to the game in the car on the way. Oh yes, and we'll be emphasising this in the commentary as well. Misty, you're a wonderful woman. And Topher, he's a good man. I know this. He deserves this opportunity to hear Wrexham. It's an addiction. You can't help it, but it's a healthy addiction. And it speaks volumes of you as a person to allow him to listen to the broadcast. Well done. We're proud of you. You're helping humanity, one person at a time. I said humanity, not huge manatees. Although I have been mistaken for one once on a beach. And Wrexham Till I Die said, can you give a shout out to Kev and Tommy and Elliot who made the trip down to Eastleigh in the snow? And can I just say how lucky Wrexham are to have supporters like that. What a horrible day it was last Saturday. But the game was on and we still had 700. So those guys and all the others who made that long trek, well done. Because that's not an easy thing to do, is it? It's not an easy thing to do. Pamela RWK, we've seen some big league signings on the Wrexham squad. How's this affecting team spirit? How does this impact the players we fell in love with on Wrexham? Welcome to Wrexham. Wow. Well, I'd say two parts to that question. Team spirit seems terrific. And I get the impression Parkinson is a manager who puts a premium on keeping players happy and motivated. So certainly team spirit seems very, very positive, and that implies that Parkinson communicates well with them what his plans are and what role they're playing in the squad. Sorry. As for the repercussions for the players you've been new in Welcome to Wrexham, well, yeah, I mean, that's a fair comment. I mean, of course, Leighton and Dibble were stars in that, but they've both been injured all season. As we mentioned before, Leighton is now available again. Generally, the spine has remained pretty much the same. You know, the likes of Hayden and Tozer and Luke Young, generally the same. But yeah, I mean, this is an inevitable fact that some players will, fall by the wayside with every football team, and when a team progresses, that's bound to happen maybe a little bit more. So we have seen good lads like Dan Jarvis, Cameron Green, and Jordan Ponticelli, and people like that move on, haven't we, since Welcome to Wrexham? that is an inevitable part of football, mind, and I think footballers do appreciate that. At this level as well, it's quite unusual to be doing what Wrexham are doing, giving long-term contracts out. So lots of players are living from year to year and hoping for a renewal, and it's unfortunate for them, and it's not easy, but it is the nature of the game, and players know that. Yeah. Streaming. Dave Chilcott says the National League told the teams how they'll be reporting subscriptions. Selfish reasons as a Wrexham fan, but I'd also like to see which teams have non-local followings and which teams might expand their marketing with this new revenue source. Dave, I don't think they will at all. I assume they've got to give us some sort of rudimentary figures for ourselves, but I suspect that'll just be given directly to clubs, if at all. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? No question we've got the widest reach because of what's happened to the club over the last 2 years by a massive distance in the National League. Traditionally, Notts County, Chesterfield are sides of a similar size to us. In fact, I'd say Notts County is slightly bigger. They've been in the top division. They come from Nottingham, which is a major city. There are two teams in Nottingham, and I admit Nottingham Forest is traditionally the bigger of the two, but Notts County are a very, very historic and very storied team, if you like. So they would have the potential to build up like that. There's not that many other really big clubs at our level at the moment. Grimsby's the same size as us, but they went up, and Stockport. York, I suppose you would say, maybe are as well. But beyond them, I'm just trying to think, have I missed somebody out? I don't think I have. The relegated teams, Oldham in particular. Oldham the first team to have played in the Premier League, which started in 1992, and then dropped down to our level. It wasn't usual when they got to the Premier League, but they did do well when they got there. They were sort of plucky and underdogs. And Scunthorpe have sort of like, they only came in the Football League in the 50s, but since then have been a competitive team. So, yeah, but they're obviously both clubs have issues off the pitch they need to rectify before they can really take advantage of that level of support. Timothy says the National League finally has its streaming service up and running. So this morning we were watching Wrexham and listening to us guys across the pond. Is there also a streaming service in League 2 for when we're promoted? Yes, and weirdly enough, you've already registered for it. Wrexham Player is part of the Football League's platform. But because we're not in the Football League, we don't need to access certain parts of it. But there is a streaming platform which will, if we go up, be automatically integrated into Wrexham Player. We'll obviously no longer be a part of the National League streaming service, but we'll be part of the Football League streaming service, which has been going for a few years now. So yes, there will be streaming from now on. Grumpy Sports Fan says, what do you think about the new streaming service? Will it affect away support in these catch-strapped days? I mean, what a sensible question. I've a funny feeling it won't. I think I'd have been maybe worried about the effect on home attendance as if we weren't absolutely packing out the racecourse, before the takeover. I might wonder about whether people might say, I'll just stay home and watch the game. I think the away fans, I don't know. I hope I'm right. I think they're a hardy bunch who are loving it. And as long as we keep this momentum going, I think that the whole experience of the day out with your mates is what they go for as much as the match. And so I think it won't hit us. It could hit other clubs. I totally get that. I think you're right. But I think I hope it'll be such a great experience travelling and watching Wrexham in away games. That being in that smaller part of the ground, but actually still could be nearly half the ground in some of these non-league games. It gives you a sense of camaraderie as well in the away end. So I hope it doesn't affect it, and I have a funny feeling it won't. I remember the first promotion season I ever saw Wrexham have was 1993, and I just coming back from away wins in a big convoy of cars of Wrexham flags hanging out the sides. It was brilliant. And that was when they started singing that song that they still sing, the E-I-E-I-E-I-O, up the Football League we go. And that became like a theme tune of that season. And all those little things stick in my head, and these little experiences. Yeah, coming back from Chesterfield was particularly memorable. We won it at Easter, 3-1 at Chesterfield. Chesterfield were a decent team, but we were brilliant. And coming back from Chesterfield, it's a really scenic drive. You go through a national park, the Peak District, so all these lovely, you go quite high up actually, get a bit of altitude going. A lot of it are one carriageway roads, and there was just unbelievable traffic going through, all the Wrexham fans coming back. But it was brilliant, you know. You knew everyone was celebrating in every car. And then we got promoted at Northampton, which I managed to get to despite being at work. Northampton's a good, 2.5 hours from Wrexham. I managed to get there in time. And I was in the away end, where Wrexham scored both the goals, which secured promotion. And that was something else. That was, so just those experiences of away games can be amazing, So I hope that doesn't put them off. Bus Tales North East. Now, please settle an argument. I say breakfast, dinner, tea. My wife says breakfast, lunch, dinner. Tell me she's wrong, please. Oh, I don't think I'm qualified to do that. I've always, I think, said breakfast, dinner, tea. But when I burped at the start of this, I was very conscious, once I said it, that I'd said, I've just had my dinner. And it's the evening now. You're asking the wrong person here. I'm so sorry. I can't resolve this marital difference. I just hope that you can learn to live alongside your dispute. Sorry. And spitball idea. I think this is the last one, but it's a beaut. The Spitfires, Eastleigh, is an excellent team name. What are some great ones with stories in English football? My home state, Indiana, has some great college team names. I'm going to be French and say Notre Dame, but you'll say Notre Dame. Fighting Irish, the Purdue Boilermakers, the Indiana Hoosiers, and a great high school one. I look at that, the Frankfurt Hot Dogs. And we talked about this a little bit last time, and I suppose we have to make a slight difference between team names and nicknames here, because the Spitfires is Eastleigh's nickname. Now, British teams tend to be fairly prosaic. Town, United, Rovers, Rangers, Wanderers. You get the odd exception that we mentioned last week, Crew Alexander, Northwich Victoria, and also, was it Roy Cuffin or Jeff Lang, one of the two guys who pointed out that I'd forgotten Hamilton Academicals, a Scottish team. Academicals, because they originally were formed by students and staff of an academy, a school in Hamilton. Eastleigh, now nicknames tend to go more down the American route of having a little bit of life to them. Eastleigh are the Spitfires, and the reason for that is that right next door to their ground is Southampton Airport, which used to be one of the airfields where the Spitfield fighter planes were based during the Second World War. So, yeah, their badge is circular, calling to mind the circular blue, white, red badge of the RAF on all the planes, and they use that sort of branding around the ground. And the Spitfire Grill, which sells the Spitfire Burger, has got like that insignia on it. There's loads of nice nicknames then. You know what, when I saw it, the first thought I had, I know this is weird, was Wycombe Wanderers. The chair... I can't say it without laughing. Sorry. They're the Chair Boys, because Wycombe is known for furniture manufacturing. So not the Choir Boys, the Chair Boys. I rather like that. I don't know what a chair boy is, but it sounds interesting. Wrexham traditionally were the Robins, by the way. And although you will find some people who are certain about why, I don't think that is accurate. I don't think anyone's totally 100% sure. Some people think because of our red shirts, but we didn't always have red shirts. In fact, one of our nicknames unofficially used to be the Sugar Bags, because we wore a shirt of white and blue stripes, which apparently looked like bags of sugar that were sold in the 20s. But more likely is because we were associated with Ted Robinson, who was a player and then club secretary running the club and we were seen as Robinson's team, but also that one of the main administrators of Welsh football was called Robbins, and he came from Wrexham. My mind's gone blank with his first name. Isn't that ridiculous? And he, so it could also be linked to that. Funnily enough, his family home's right next to where my mum and dad lived and where I was brought up. Spooky fact. So, yeah, our nickname, Robbins, then turned into the Red Dragons. That's a long story for another day as well. Okay, other nicknames, like Man United being the Red Devils, for example, Arsenal being the Gunners because they were initially based where there had been an Arsenal in Woolwich. Someone's colours of shirts, Norwich City, the Canaries, playing bright yellow and bright green. There's lots of great nicknames. Why have I not sat down and thought beforehand? Chesterfield's main feature is its church. Look it up, it's weird. Has got a crooked spire, which I'm assuming is not deliberate. It's one of those sort of Middle Ages, medieval architectural things where they'd throw up a building and see if it stayed up. And it's sort of stayed up, but it's really twisted. And so Chesterfield are the Spireites. York has a beautiful, massive church, which is called York Minster. So they're the Minster Men. I'll have to have a think. There's loads more, aren't there? Juventus are the Old Lady, because they're like the traditional team that always wins in Italy. You know what? I should have thought about this. Seaside teams, end up being called the Seagulls or the Shrimpers in Southend's case. Southport's have a bit of a sort of mouthful. The Sandgrounders. Southport Beach is just, you have to go over miles to get to the sea. And then a lot just name themselves randomly. Cardiff, the Bluebirds. Like Swansea City, the Swans. Go figure. Hull playing orange and black stripes, the Tigers. Lincoln has a massive, beautiful cathedral, which you can actually see from the ground. It sort of dominates the whole area. And it's on top of a hill, and it's quite a flat area. You see it for miles around. And famously, there's a little Easter egg in there. There's a tiny little imp carved into the ceiling, which has become like a symbol of Lincoln. It's a cheeky little thing. And so, Lincoln are the imps. Scunthorpe United are the Iron, and West Ham are the Irons because of iron manufacturing in that area. Some quite dull, like the Reds, obviously. Man City I don't think this is a long-term thing. I think it's something that's happened in the last 20-odd years, are the Citizens, because they're Man City, but Citizens misspelled with a Y. No, not for me. Notts County Magpies, so again, animals. Aston Villa, the Villains. Fantastic. West Bromwich Albion, have got one nickname, the Throssels, so a type of bird, and it's on their badge. But their other nickname is the Baggies, which apparently is because at half time, all the money will have been collected from the turnstiles, and then a group of men from the turnstiles would take it to the club safe, walking around the side of the pitch with big bulging bags of cash. So they were nicknamed the Baggies, apparently. So there's all sorts of strange ones. It is fascinating. I'll probably think of some more in a bit. Oh my gosh! Is Cowdenbeath? Is it official that they get called the Blue Brazil? There's an element of irony, I think, about that. They're up in Scotland. I'll need to think of more. It's not much fun, is it, really, watching some old bloke trying to remember football teams' nicknames? I'm sure. Peterborough are the Posh. They used to have this cartoon figure of a posh man with a top hat and a monocle, and that became synonymous with Peterborough. The Posh. Peterborough, I've been there. It's a perfectly pleasant place. I wouldn't say it's particularly posh or not posh, to be perfectly honest with you. Hereford are the Bulls. That's a very rural area. And for big games, Hereford, and I like this sort of local spice. Hereford, they bring on a bull and walk it round the pitch. when they have a really big game. Look on YouTube, you'll see it. It's a strange sight, this huge beast walking around. Shrewsbury are the Shrews. Well done for trying. Chester, God knows what they are. Tesco bags, are they, or something? I can't remember. Yeah. Halifax are the Shamen, not shaman. They don't make you drink potions and then hallucinate in the jungle. In the jungle, on the prairie. It's because their ground is called the Shay. Oh, Lewis, a team that has been at our level, but it's a small team down south of London, has this beautiful ground called the Dripping Pan. Now that's what you should call a football ground, isn't it? The Dripping Pan. Isn't that fantastic? What a Colchester. Can't remember. Charlton Athletic in London are the Addicts. Not the Addicts. The Addicts. Can't remember why. That was a useless thing to tell you. Port Vale, disappointingly, are the Valiants. Stoke City are the Potters, because there was a centre of world pottery industry, really, that area around Stoke, for a long, long time. I'm genuinely going to stop now, because I really am banging on and on and on now, and I think it's gone beyond the point where it could have been interesting. So anyway, that's me for the week. It's been lovely chatting to you. Keep those Ask Wrexhams coming in, and I'll keep trying to bore you by remembering clubs' nicknames. Wolverhampton are the Wolves, Coventry City are the Sky Blues. So, have a lovely time, chaps. Southampton are the Saints, Portsmouth are Pompey. I probably knew why once. Bristol Rovers are the Pirates, but they also have a modern nickname of the Gasheads, just because they nicknamed the gas for... yeah, again, can't remember the reason for that. Bristol City are Robins, Swindon are Robins. Bristol City are Robins, aren't they? And Middlesbrough were the Borough, but they now also call them the Smoggies, because it's smoggy, and Middlesbrough is a very big industrial town, and people used to insultingly call them Smogheads. Sunderland, I will stop now, are the Mackhams, because they had shipyards in Sunderland, and they used to say in their local accent, we mack 'em, you tack 'em. Yeah, we make them, you take them. So the Mackhams. Right, I'm going. I am Mark Griffiths of the Red Dragons, and I'll see you soon. Don't forget, live game on Saturday. Get on Wrexham Player, sync it with the stream, and bingy bangy bongy. Use Ask Wrexham. Adios, muchachos.